Welcome to the Creative Coast's video podcasts, featuring Savannah's top thinkers, business people, innovators, and creators. With host B. Ray, director of the Creative Coast, and program director Sharice Bennett. What follows are interviews running on the Creative Coast's website this month. You can check out the podcasts day or night at thecreativcoast.org/blog.
Brick wall after brick wall after brick wall.
Hello and welcome to the front porch. My name is B. Ray. I'm with the Creative Coast, and today we are chatting it up with Jamie Mcgrath, teacher extraordinaire at Gould Elementary.
Thank you.
I saw your TED Talk and it blew me away. You are one passionate teacher.
I do love it, yes. I get to teach gifted students. This year I'm teaching 3rd and 4th grade students, and it's just that perfect age when their minds really begin to open up, and yet they haven't thought about a lot of things yet. So it's the ripe opportunity to expose them to new ideas.
I have a 3rd grader. Give me some advice.
Oh, well, then I will. In our gifted standards, one of the main things is creative and logical problem solving. So normally when you think about creativity, there's a lot of mythos about it, that it's magic and pixie dust. But to me, it's a set of skills. It's something that can be taught and learned, and something that can be developed in children and in adults even, so there's hope. So it's not like we're born creative or not. You always hear people say, "Oh, I can't even draw a straight line."
Right.
Like you go into a museum, and of course everything on the walls is just straight lines because that's the standard of artistic ability. So, we can develop creativity in children and logical problem solving as something really practical, something that you do, something you use. And so the distinction I make between them is a creative skill is where you're making something new, and a logical skill is where you're just solving something, making something work. So an example I use with my students is, let's say you're out at the beach and you're sitting in one of those cheap plastic chairs, like those resin yard chairs, right. And you lean back a little and the leg snaps off, you're tumbling in the sand, and so now your chair's broken and you have to do something about it. You have no tools, you can attach that anyway. So you cast about a bit and you find, there's a piece of driftwood. It's like a log, and it's about the same length as your chair leg, and you jam it up under the chair there, and you solved it. That's a logical solution. Right. You didn't replace it. A more creative solution would be if you look at it and say, okay, well, I can make something new out of this, so I can still sit in it. You might snap off the other back leg, and then bury the front legs halfway, so you now have a reclined beach chair, which is probably better for the beach anyway. Right. But it's not like creative solutions are better. If my brakes are squealing, I take the car to the garage, I want a brake job, change the pads, turn the rotors. If he comes out after looking at my brakes and says, I have a pile of chicken bones and a bunch of rubber bands, and we can, I'm going to the next mechanic up the road. So logical solutions have their place, and so do creative. Now, what you can do with your daughter is design. So I've learned that doing design projects, pretty much of any sort, is that perfect intersection of creative and logical problem-solving skills. Last year, we did this great project where I challenged them to design the ideal student desk and chair. And it was amazing once we started looking into it how many complaints people had about school furniture. Drew famously called it CFD, crappy furniture disorder, as it infected our schools. So here's how we went about it. First, I had them take apart everyday objects like glue sticks and markers, things they use in school every day, and analyze them, measure them out. They drew them to scale, and what materials, how do they work, and it was just a little eye-opening. And then they did the same with chairs and tables around school, and so on their own they discovered that there are industry standards for like the height of a seat of a chair and the back and the distance of the arms. And we had some experts come in. Bob Bazemore, a SCAD professor and independent designer, came in, showed us student work and his work. Drew Davies came in from Paragon and just taught about design in general and logo design. We had Heather Novak, who's a vice president over at National Office Systems, bring in examples, samples of her chairs.
Great.
And they analyzed them and looked at, why are the arms like this? And some of them had a neat little thing was on the armrests. There was a softer plastic there. So when you're sitting in a meeting and you're bored, you have something to fidget with, which they really appreciated. Next step was they went out and interviewed all the stakeholders they talked to, and they went out on their own. I just said,
These are third graders.
That was third and fifth graders collaborated on this project. And so I said, go interview people. They talked to students, they talked to teachers, custodians, administration, and said, what do you hate about your desk? What do you not like about your chair? What do you like? What could be better? Then they collected all this data, collated it, put it onto one big poster, and then started thinking about, well, how can we solve these problems? And then came the big design step, where they actually created designs for chairs and desks that could be used in schools. They even talked with a board member. Jenny Lambeth was generous enough with their time to communicate with my students. And the last step, of course, was to present what they had come up with. So they had to come up with a catchy name for it, a slogan. They had to write ad copy, besides just drawing it up. One of my favorites was called and I think this is a viable product, so anybody listening out there, it's called the Cushy Chair, which is a great name, I think.
Right.
Especially when we're talking about student. Have you seen student chairs? They're not cushy. And so it was this plush armchair, and on one of the arms there was a swivel tablet top.
Oh, right.
And because a big complaint they had was that smaller students said, this desk is not my size, and larger students said, I can't get in and out of this very easily. And so that makes it perfectly adjustable there. Another complaint we heard was about storage. So the Cushy Chair has, in the legs, they're actually big, bulky legs. So they have storage compartments right down there, one of which is a locker, a mini locker. Because another complaint was somebody always takes my pencils. So that solves that problem. And there was storage under the chair as well, because we heard a lot of storage complaints. On the back of the chair was also pretty bulky, and on either side of the back of the chair there's a hook, one for your coat and one for your backpack, because teachers complain that kids, they'll forget something in the backpack, which is on the other side of the room, in the middle of class. They have to get up and go fetch it, and they go out for recess. Everybody has to first parade around and get all their coats, and problem solved. It's right there with you all day. Right. And it was amazing. The most important thing in this project was that outside of having the experts come in and talk to them, everything they did, I could be accused of being lazy. I did no teaching in this whatsoever. It was just go interview people. How can you solve that? All I had to do was ask them questions, and they came up with all the solutions themselves. And so when they do this, they have to be creative, they have to be logical, they have to find solutions, and then those skills are transferable to their academics, to other things. Isn't that what we do all day as adults? Right.
So is this in a particular class? So in what class did they do the research to design the Cushy Chair? Just in regular third, fifth grade work, or is there a class course?
The way it works and it differs even from school to school, but in my school we have a pull-out time for identified gifted students. So this year, for example, I get my third graders for 4.5 hours a week, where they come with me and we work on these things. But you can see throughout, like with the measurement, a third grade math standard is learning to measure.
Sure.
And so what better way to teach kids to measure than to put a ruler in their hands and say, okay, how big is that magic marker? And how big is the cap, and what are the proportions between them?
And I bet they went home and started measuring all sorts of things.
Oh yeah, I heard from parents about it throughout. They're analyzing their home furniture. Yes.
So talk a little bit about you, Jamie. When did you say teaching is for me?
What I was doing before I started teaching was children's ministry, actually. And I believe it or not, I actually saw teaching as a way to make an even deeper impact in the lives of children, and to, in that way, really help shape the future.
Isn't that great? Wow. Well, Jamie, I just thank you so much. I thank you for what you do in the schools, what you do with the community, and thanks for being a part of the Front Porch right here today.
You're welcome. Well, thank you.
Great. Hello and welcome to the Front Porch. My name is Bee Ray. I'm with the Creative Coast, and today we are chatting it up with Colby Harrell. Welcome, Colby.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
So you do an awful lot of things and have some passions. One is community involvement through DEEP. Tell us about what DEEP is.
Well, DEEP is a creative writing nonprofit that operates in all of the middle schools in Chatham County. And they go in, they work with middle school students. They teach creative writing workshops for 12 weeks. And at the end of those 12 weeks, they publish the kids in a professionally illustrated anthology. And they have a big book release, and it's really awesome.
And why do kids need to know about creative writing?
Well, I think we are able with DEEP to offer them something that they don't get in school a lot, and that's complete autonomy with what they choose to write about. And it doesn't matter how crazy the ideas are or what kind of sparks them or inspires them. We foster that as much as we can, and we let them tell their stories and just encourage them along the way that their stories are important and that they matter. And a lot of the time, I think in public education, we are really worried about the exam at the end of the semester or at the end of the year, that we don't really pause to let the kids kind of decompress a little and say whatever it is that they need to say. And that's what we give them in DEEP. We get them interested in really cool poets and literaries. And then we give them awesome writing. I think they're awesome writing prompts. We give them awesome writing prompts and create a culture where they're welcome to talk about whatever they want to talk about. And then at the end, they share. And I think that's important for a kid to have that time.
What's an example of an awesome writing prompt?
Wow, put me on the spot. An awesome writing prompt. Oh gosh. Let's see. One that I like. I'm not sure I've given this one, but I've at least given it thought and thought about it. I think it was a man jumps from like a 40th story of a building. And as he's falling and he passes like the 16th floor or something, he hears a phone ring and regrets that he jumped. Why? And that might seem super, super heavy for a middle school kid, but you'd be surprised if you give them the right amount of latitude at where they take something like this. I mean, they could easily say he forgot to program his flying shoes and suddenly he remembered, boom, puts on his flying shoes, gets them booted up, and he flies off into the sun. Like, it doesn't always end sad for them. I probably haven't given that because it can be super, super heavy. But that's okay. You can't be scared to give them any kind of a prompt and just let them run with it however they want.
Right.
So, and I can't take credit for that. That's from a book called like 641 Things to Write About that some fellas in San Francisco put together. But we steal a lot of ideas from each other, and we encourage kids to steal ideas from each other as well.
And how long has DEEP been around?
DEEP has been around for 5 years, I believe.
Okay, so you're already starting to see some of the original students are about to graduate from high school, I guess.
Actually, some of them have graduated from
Okay.
high school.
Okay, so that's right.
It's hard to say. I've been with DEEP for a couple of years, and sadly this semester will be my first semester not teaching creative writing because of other educational opportunities that have presented themselves.
Got it.
Mm.
And so what is the thing you love to write about or talk about? What are some of your passions?
Lately, well, it's funny you say that. Lately I've been passionate about writing about education. Particularly, I work mostly in all of the different nonprofits that I work with outside of DEEP and the other things that I teach. The commonality is that I'm working with middle school students and they're all low income and they're mostly black. And so I've been passionate about that achievement gap that exists for those students, but more importantly, the opportunity gap that exists for them. There are certain opportunities that I've been afforded as a middle class white kid growing up that they don't necessarily have. And you take a city like Savannah, it's one of the most walkable cities in the country. And I've got kids in my class that have lived in Savannah their whole lives that have never been to Forsyth Park, that have never been to the beach. And so something that really pushes me, lately anyways, is giving these kids those life experiences. Mm-hmm. I don't care if they want to sit in my class and write or or whatever. Like, it's really hard if you don't have a lot of life experience. It's hard to write at all, I think.
Sure.
Creative writing is, for me, a lot of my creativity comes from just cool things that I've done and seen. And if they haven't done or seen any of those things, how can I expect them to sit down and write an awesome fictional story?
And so you'll organize a bus trip to the beach?
Ideally, those are the types of things that start to happen. I just go in and help them mostly with homework and stuff.
Okay.
So I'm not really the guy that is able yet to figure out how that works, how to orchestrate a bus of kids to go to Forsyth or whatever. I did work with Horizon Savannah this past summer,
Right.
which is a nonprofit that, and I taught creative writing with them. I drew a lot on my experiences with Deep. But the cool thing about Horizons was we took a field trip every week.
Great.
The kids swam 3 times a week. They did rec time twice a week. So there was, and the rec time was like kayaking and fishing and cool things like that. It wasn't
Wonderful.
just like, tossing around a frisbee in the yard or whatever. So that was really cool to be able to see them grow academically with writing and reading and financial education and career and college readiness, but also to take them downtown to the Jepson and to take them to the beach and to take them to Forsyth and to do all those things. And I realized very quickly that that's what's missing, I think, for a lot of these kids in public education, is
Right.
those experiences.
Great, that's a great observation. And what do you think it is about middle school students that attracts you with your work?
Wow, that's a great question. They are really creative. They are really bright. I mean, the amount of neural pathways that are firing in a middle schooler's head is just astounding. And they don't know where they fit yet socially. It's really interesting. So if I set a bunch of middle school students in front of, if we do an activity on the computers, the first thing most middle schoolers do, they don't get on Facebook or Twitter. They get on Google Earth and they look up, or Google Maps, and they look up their homes
Wow.
or their school. So they figuratively don't know where they are exactly as people, but also very literally they're interested in that thing. And I've never taken that and ran with it, but I plan to, I think. One of these days, just throw my lesson out the window and be like, yo, let's mess around on Google Earth for a while. Let's look up some colleges or look up some places that we've never seen that we'd love to see. Do like the street view of some cool place in
Right,
London
yeah.
or whatever. But so that's the best way to put it, is they don't know yet where they are socially. The adolescent rebellion thing fascinates me. Like it's psychologists devote their entire lives to studying adolescent rebellion. It's interesting because they'll rebel against what I say as a teacher, but they conform to their peers like that,
Right.
Whatever's cool, like they will do it in a second, but they will totally rebel against this writing assignment that I want them to do. So that's a big reason why I like middle school students. And also they're right on the cusp of being tarnished by adult bigotry. A lot of them, they don't see the world in being as bad a shape as you and I see the world. But they're right on the cusp. They're not far from getting to that point. I mean, some of the 8th graders, they head into 9th grade and suddenly, boom, it hits them. And they start accepting some of these ideas that adults have that are wrong, that we're wrong for the way we see the world a lot of the time. They start buying into that. So that's why I like middle school the most, I think.
You have like a last window.
This
to
is the
share
last
it.
chance that I have to get them to understand that, I don't know, just whatever people are saying when they get to be our age, whatever they're saying isn't always true. And you don't have to swallow everything that we tell you uncritically. You can think for yourself. You can dream big. That's another reason why. I could go all day on why I love middle school.
That's great.
That's another reason is a lot of these kids, I ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? And some of them will say, I want to be a professional athlete. A lot of adults in their lives will tell them that they need to reconsider that right away. They'll be like, why don't you pick a more realistic dream? But for some reason, if that same kid says, I want to be an astronaut, that's considered an acceptable answer. And I think that that's crazy. Because these kids are coming, they're coming from low-income neighborhoods. The odds of them graduating college are like 9% for that income bracket. So for me, I'm like, I don't care what your dream is. I think that's awesome. What are you doing today to actualize that dream? Did you try it for the basketball team? Do you have a place to shoot hoops on Saturdays? Are you a student of the sport? Do you study offensive schemes and defensive schemes? Do you read coach biographies and player biographies? Do you watch basketball? Are you going to try out in high school if you don't make the team your freshman year? What are you going to do? And get them thinking in that kind of way. I am not there to tell them that their dream is stupid or unrealistic, regardless of what it is. And so that's why I love it too. Is I'm like their cheerleader all day long. I'm like, you know what? That's awesome.
That is great. Wow, Colby, I am so excited for what you do and how you do it and for all that you contribute to Savannah. Thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate it.
Hello and welcome to the Front Porch. My name is Bee Ray. I'm with the Creative Coast, and today we're here chatting it up with Camilla Meshiea. Hey, Camilla.
Hello.
Happy to have you here.
Happy to be here. How are you?
Fabulous.
Good.
Talk to me about beauty and the discussion around beauty and what that means to you.
Okay. So for the years that I've spent working in athletics, and more specifically in the gym for the past 3 years, I've seen firsthand that the struggle that the beauty culture is causing for a lot of women. So I'm seeing that there's a sort of a disconnect between the way that beauty is discussed in mass media and the way that women are experiencing their own bodies and their own idea of beauty. So what I'm finding is that women are just having a really hard time accepting, finding, and acknowledging and enjoying their idea of beauty. So through the gym, through fitness, through health, and conversation, I'm hoping to make that a more pleasurable experience for women and help them feel empowered and help them feel beautiful.
You said something, I believe, in your TED Talk about getting excited about what your body can do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was powerful.
Yeah, I think that too often we are reduced to an aesthetic and we forget that the beauty of the body is in its power and in its movement and in its activity and in its action. And what we did at our gym was we just focused really on thinking about what your body can do, constantly thinking about the process and realizing that we're always making progress. So regardless of how naturally athletic you are, you have always a place that you start, step one, and there will always be progress as long as you're committed to that process. And so what you would see is that people who thought they weren't capable of much, who always thought that they were going to be weak or never thought that they were capable of doing these sorts of things, they would start to see that when they wouldn't do it day one, they were able to do it day 60 or day 300.
Right.
So we were seeing that they were now finding beauty and pride in their body, not because of it was reaching a definition, but because it was actually doing something.
Right. And so you've also created something that's involving bringing your daughter to work out.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So my mother, long ago, was a yoga teacher. And I remember being very young, 7, 8 years old, and she would let me sit in on her yoga classes. And it had a huge impact on me, but I didn't really realize that impact until quite recently. Watching my mom be a teacher, seeing her be an expert in something, seeing her use her body in a meditative way that she was really good at and was able to share that with other people and help them become good at it, had a huge impact, even at that young age. My mother was of an era of the diet culture, but which did have like a negative impact on me, I think. But this counteracted it very profoundly because what I saw was my mother taking joy in what her body was able to do. And it was really amazing role model for me to see, especially that she was sharing it with other women. And I think what is taught through fitness and through athletics is a really positive version of competition. And I think that that's something that women are often struggling with these days, whether it's in the workplace or in sports. So Bring Your Daughter to Work Out Day isn't just for mothers and daughters, it's really for any woman who wants to be a mentor to a younger woman. And it doesn't have to be at a gym, it can be a hike, it could be a tennis match, it really doesn't matter. It's simply setting that example of camaraderie among women, of competition that's positive, of sharing something, of bonding. So yeah, that's the plan, and it's in the works for next January.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
And you've lived all over the world.
Yeah.
So what does that, as someone who's traveled so much and been in different places, are these things unique to Savannah or something you've seen throughout the world, or show us similarities and contrasts?
I think that they are not unique to Savannah. I think that it's fluctuating as feminism changes in society, as media changes in society. That it's always shaping and changing the way that women are experiencing their body, through body image, through fitness. I definitely think that there is a more extreme culture in the United States. It's much more difficult to inhabit a gray area. People are either in or they're out. They're either like fully athletic or they're absolutely not. And I think what is important to learn is that idea of balance and moderation. But yeah, I don't think it's unique to this region necessarily. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite place that you've lived?
Gosh, not yet. I've always felt like there's no specific place that I call home, even though I was raised in London, and that doesn't necessarily feel like my only home. I kind of feel like I'm destined to be a rambling rose.
There you go. Wonderful. Well, obviously, you enjoy working out. It sounds a little bit for yourself and the enjoyment, but also sharing with others. And you have a particular sport you spent some time in. Tell us about that.
So Muay Thai is the sport that I became most serious about in my athletic history. I guess I was in my early 20s when I started. Initially, it was just a way to get healthy, to feel fit. And then as I started to learn more about the practice of a martial art, I started to become really attached to its philosophy of using all of the limbs. It's a very intuitive sport. And I think I've joked about this a lot, but it was the first time I felt graceful.
Wow.
It's a violent sport. Yes, it's ultimately boxing and hitting people and getting hit, but there's something very balletic about it also. And I loved that feeling of virtuosity, of just being able to move and be skilled at something too.
And are you still doing it?
I don't do Muay Thai anymore, no. Now I'm primarily doing CrossFit, which is a mixture of weightlifting and sort of cardio and gymnastics and all kinds of stuff.
Wow. Well, it's always great to see you, Camilla. Thank you for being here, and thanks for all the work you do, keeping us healthy.
Thank you for having me.
Hello and welcome to the front porch. My
Thanks
name
for
is
having me.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you, Sally Kingston, here from the Iron Yard in Charleston.
Yep.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So, Sally, what is the Iron Yard?
The Iron Yard is a few things. In Charleston, it's an academy. So we do 12-week classes that teach people with any amount of programming experience to be software engineers.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I come in and I've only done a tiny bit of programming, and 12 weeks later,
You're getting a job as a programmer or starting your own business doing programming.
great. And how long have you been open in Charleston?
Our first class started March 31st.
Wow.
So we're 4 weeks into our second round of classes.
And tell me, when did you start thinking about having Iron Yard in Charleston?
So I joined the Iron Yard once they had already decided to have something in Charleston, which was
Okay.
pretty exciting. So they, I think around late 2013, decided that they wanted to start expanding across the Southeast. And when they started looking into cities that made sense, Charleston was one of the first ones. So they looked into it then, and by March we were starting our class.
Isn't that great? And you are an engineer yourself?
Sort of.
Okay.
I do have programming and engineering background, but for the past 5 years or so I've been doing, I've been in software development, but in more process, operational, organizational roles.
Got it. And now are you part of the teaching staff, or?
No, I am the campus director, which means that I do everything except teaching.
Okay.
Which is pretty exciting.
Right, because you don't care to teach.
I do a little bit of teaching. I don't run a whole class. The thing that I really enjoy is having something different to do every 20 minutes, more or less.
Yeah, okay.
So I do a couple of lectures throughout the semester on sort of the softer skills that make someone a really great software developer. My first lecture,
Like what?
How to work on a team, what kinds of communication is really important, agile software development processes, just so that they can at least have an understanding of what that might be like. Most of the software development that happens in Charleston is at least somewhat agile. Mm-hmm. Then we also talk a lot about getting a job side towards the end of the class. So I talk about how to write a really good cover letter, how to read a job description for a software developer and actually understand what it means. Because if you've just gotten into this, it all just looks like Martian language when you start looking at job descriptions. And we do some interview skills and things like that.
And that's all part of the 12 weeks, or that's in
Yeah,
addition?
that's part of the 12
Okay, that's actually
weeks.
part of the curriculum.
Yep.
So, how big are the classes?
15 people at the most.
Got it. And they run throughout the year. And tell me about the languages.
We have 2 classes in Charleston right now. First one is front-end engineering, where they do HTML and CSS, but mostly JavaScript engineering. They get pretty heavy into a couple different JavaScript frameworks, and by the end of it are able to make some pretty exciting web applications. Our other class is Ruby on Rails engineering, which is sort of more the back end of things. They also do HTML, CSS, and JavaScript because at the end they're able to be a full stack developer and make a complete web application entirely on their own. But they focus more on the Ruby on Rails. They do some database stuff, some pretty exciting technologies back there as well.
Incredible. And talk to me about the getting a job stuff. So I sign up, I pay for a class, and what happens 12 weeks later?
12 weeks later, you have learned all of this amazing software development, and you have the beginnings of a really fantastic portfolio as well, because all of the assignments are project-based.
Oh, great.
So at that point, you're sort of, your touch point shifts from the instructors to the campus director. So I build on the lectures that I did throughout the semester about how to sort of create all these application materials and start working one-on-one with all the students to make sure that they're representing themselves as well as they can. It can be especially difficult for someone who's switching careers, who maybe had a background in teaching or in sales or in mechanics. We had an airplane mechanic come through the class.
Oh, wow.
So figuring out how to work his resume around so that it showed that he, although he had a lot of experience as an airplane mechanic, was now looking for a software engineering job and was going to be really good at it.
Great. And how'd that go?
It went great. He actually got a job last week, which I'm really excited about.
Congratulations. That's
Yeah.
really wonderful. How many technology coding jobs need to be filled in the next 12 months in Charleston?
I think I read a number that was somewhere around 200, which
Okay.
is astonishing. And that's new jobs. There are already some that are sitting there unfilled
Sure.
already. And that the programs in Charleston, the sort of more traditional educational programs, are going to be graduating around 20 people qualified
Yes.
for those jobs in the next year. So there's a huge gap there.
Right, so you have your work cut out for you.
Yeah.
And what does it mean for sort of the future of industry, entrepreneurship, companies growing? I mean, is coders, how important is coding?
I think it's kind of astonishing. I knew it was everywhere before I joined this company, or before I started working with the Iron Yard, which is part of why I wanted to come. But now that I'm really getting into like looking at all of the possible jobs out there, it seems like no matter what industry you want to work in, there's a position for a developer. They need, at the bare minimum, a web presence, but often they have, you'll go to a restaurant and realize that they have an app that you can use to order ahead or to just sort of see the specials, things like that. Or a clothing company has like a pretty cool e-commerce site, things like that. And just about every industry at this point has need for some developers.
Do you have the app in your head that you need in your life?
Yeah, I do.
What's that? Or do you not want to tell us?
No, it's okay. I'd love for somebody else to make it. I just want it to exist.
Oh, good.
I want something that will take a whole bunch of recipes that I pick out,
Okay.
figure out what ingredients I need, and then order it from one of those grocery stores that lets you order it online. So I can just go pick up the ingredients and come home and cook a week's worth of meals.
Can I come to dinner?
Yes, absolutely.
I want the one that when my kid's room is clean, then they get the Wi-Fi password for the day.
Yes, I would use that one as well.
Okay, good. Well, we'll do that one together.
Yeah.
Maybe some of your students. Maybe that'll be your project.
Yeah, I am constantly dropping little app ideas around them saying, I would be really happy if you made this.
And how, it's all adults.
It is. We require, the only like strict prerequisite to get into the class is that you have either a high school diploma or a GED.
Okay.
But the ages range wildly. We've had students as young as 20 and as old as mid to late 50s.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what happens if I graduate and I just can't find a job?
I'm not sure because it hasn't happened yet.
Good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I doubt that we'll get in that situation, but we would just keep working with you.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, I am so thankful that you are here, and I'm really thankful for all the work that you do, creating great new coders all throughout the Southeast.
Thanks for having me. It's great to talk to you.
Wonderful to talk to you, Sally. Thank you.